Ladies and gentlemen, gather ye round as we journey back in time. Arr! That's my best attempt at sounding like a pirate.
Have you been drinking?
Nice. But stop pointing at a mulberry tree while scolding a locust tree.
Huh? What?
指桑骂槐.
I'm gonna have to check that up. Okay, we've got ourselves a Chinese idiom.
You know, pointing at a mulberry tree, scolding something about like calling a kettle black. In other words, you're accusing me of something you're guilty of.
Okay, and I see here it means indirect criticism, so you've got it wrong as well.
Okay, well.
Yes. Anyway, I like that. Locust tree, something to look up later. So, Mr. Whitebeard, perhaps you could tell our listeners where we're headed in today's Formosa Files story before they head off.
Good point.
The Taiwan History Podcast, Formosa Files, is made possible through the generous sponsorship of the Frank C. Chen Foundation. Formosa Files.
We journey back in time. When? To the first decades of the 1600s, roughly 400 years ago. The place? The coast of Ming Dynasty China. The background? Naval ambitions by coalitions of local pirates as well as expansionist Europeans. There will be many years of battles on land and sea for control of territory and trading rights, and oodles of political drama as the Great Ming enters its death spiral that will finally end with the forced imposition of the world's worst hairstyle by the victorious Great Qing.
Not bad. And yes, it's a turbulent time. The first 50 years of the 1600s were decades that set up a new world order in many places, not the least of which was Taiwan. But you left out the who of who we're focusing on today. Everyone's heard of Koxinga, Lord of Formosa. He defeated the Dutch, of course, booted them out of Taiwan in 1662. Much lesser known, but perhaps even more incredible a man than Koxinga was his father, Zheng Zhilong.
Oh, yes. Daddy Zheng beats Zheng Jr. hands down. Let me see if I can shorten his bio, as the real story we want to tell today is how he beat the Dutch in an epic battle near Jinmen almost 30 years before his son sailed to conquer Taiwan. So, Zheng Zhilong, he's born in 1604. As a teenager, he leaps aboard a merchant ship bound for Macau, possibly to escape punishment for fooling around with concubines that didn't belong to him, or possibly were his father's concubines?
Yeah, that's the story, but probably not true. It's more likely he simply had an itch for adventure. So he headed off to the global trading hub of Portuguese Macau, where Portuguese Jesuits converted this Daddy Zheng, as you called him, to Catholicism.
Aye, but the call of Christ be not as strong as the call of the sea.
Okay, how long is this going to go on for?
You mean the pirate voice?
Yeah. Are you done?
I'm mostly done.
Mostly. Okay. Excellent. But you're right. Zheng Zhilong has the sea in his bones. And speaking of bones, well, skull and bones. By 1624, the same year the Dutch arrived in Taiwan, and the same year his famous son was born to a Japanese woman on an island near Nagasaki, Daddy Zheng. Oh. Okay, I can't keep calling him that. I just can't. I have another idea. We could alternate between his Chinese name and his Christian name. When he was baptized in Macau, he took the name Nicholas Gaspard.
Ooh, classy.
So Nicholas Gaspard becomes a formidable pirate trader, we might say. He begins collaborating with the Dutch East India Company to disrupt Chinese shipping. So he's in league with the Dutch, making trouble for the Chinese authorities.
Okay, so these Chinese authorities and the disruption, we're talking about disrupting Ming Dynasty shipping.
Yeah, the Qing were still working their way down from the plains of Manchuria. They hadn't taken over China yet.
Right. So the Dutch, or more accurately, the VOC, in English, that would be the Dutch East India Company, wants to trade with Ming China and also Japan, but neither of those places are like super keen on the idea. So Zheng and his pirates, traders, make a deal with the VOC that basically goes something like this. You guys pay us, we'll make trouble with the Ming and force them into some sort of trade deal. And the Dutch have some of the best warships on Earth at the time. So Nick is cool with this mini alliance. He's like, I'll copy or buy as much Western sea war tech as I can, and I'll unite the pirate clans.
Sorry, did you say Nick?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so we've gone from Nicholas Gaspard to Nick.
Is Nicky better?
Oh, Jesus. You, my friend, are enough to drive a man to drink.
You know, you're not the only one who's told me that.
But again, yes, where are we? By 1630, Zheng's got maybe 400 junks of various sizes, plenty of European weapons, as well as some Europeans in his pirate navy.
The VOC, and you've mentioned this before, it's a multinational company, but so was Zheng's Pirate Incorporated. His fleet is staffed with tens of thousands of men, mostly Chinese, but also Japanese, Koreans, some from parts of Southeast Asia. His bodyguards are black slaves, well, former slaves, escapees from the Portuguese, and some Europeans as well. Business is good for this group of traders/pirates. You could have kind of renamed the South China Sea back then the Nicholas Zheng Lake. If you wanted to trade by ship, you paid. And the Chinese Imperial Navy, so we're talking about the Ming Dynasty Navy, is not able to keep up and in fact is destroyed in 1628. So 1628, his son Koxinga would be, 4 years old? Still up in Japan, in Nagasaki, with his Japanese mom?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, the story of the victory against the Ming fleet, we can tell that in another episode. But yes, the southern Ming Navy were defeated in a series of battles. So thus far, Zheng has been in league with the Dutch and the head of a pirate navy. But following his victory over the Ming, Zheng makes a bold move. He switches sides and declares loyalty to the Ming. The happy Ming court give him the title of Major General, I think it was. And combining his fleet with what's left of the Ming Navy, he's got over 800 ships. Some of them are pretty big too.
So Zheng Zhilong, now an ex-pirate warlord, is basically lord of shipping between, John, would it be fair to say from like Vietnam all the way to Japan?
Yes. Yep.
That's impressive, man, for a guy who's not even 30 at this point? Whew, amazing. So it's roughly 1630-ish, and quite reasonably, people start calling Nicholas Gaspard Zheng Zhilong Admiral of the Coastal Seas. Okay, so we've given you the backstory. Let's get to the fun part. The tale of the Battle of Liaoluo Bay. So the Liao is the Chinese character for Ziliao, material, Liao, and Luo is in Luoma, and this bay is in Jinmen, off the coast of Jinmen. And during this battle, our dashing pirate turned admiral is going to teach the Dutch, perhaps the mightiest, but also perhaps the haughtiest seagoing megapower of Europe at the time, an important lesson, and that is never underestimate your opponent. John, why does it seem to me that this particular lesson is the most common lesson in military history?
Oh, you mean underestimating your opponent? I think there's a reason the Dutch are so confident, so cocky. They've been doing a lot of winning. And in 1633, the fourth Dutch governor of Formosa, Hans Putmans, he destroyed Zheng Zhilong's brand new fleet of 30 magnificent half-Chinese, half-European-style warships. Putmans and his warships just sailed into a harbor near Xiamen, where these ships were getting their last coats of paint. And Zheng's people apparently thought they were there to talk about trade or something. So not thinking the Dutch were hostile, these ships were let in unopposed. Then boom, 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 all but 3 are destroyed. Putmans had been Zheng Zhilong's ally, remember, but now with Zheng firmly on the side of the Ming, this Dutch commander decided it would be a good idea to eliminate his fleet, destroy them before they have a chance to become a threat.
Man, the dastardly Dutch. How Pearl Harbor of them. A date that will live in infamy. But to be fair, if I had been Putman's, yeah, I would have done the same. And am I going too far to think that Putman's is probably not completely sold on the idea of Zheng Zhilong being all that awesome? He's maybe thinking, yeah, lucky pirate, did pretty well for a while, but also he's looking over at the Ming Dynasty, which is getting weaker. They've got internal and external threats going on, and ripe fruit.
Yes. It's all in flux, isn't it? It's a very changing situation. By the early 1600s, the Dutch, or more accurately, the Dutch East India Company, VOC, they're masters of trade and navigation, and they've established a presence in the area that was close to eliminating the Spanish from everywhere but the Philippines. The Portuguese were in Macau, a few other trading ports, but they're not a big trading power. So if you're a VOC official in the region at the time, you'd look at the crumbling Ming dynasty and start salivating. You'd be drooling over the prospects.
So for the Ming, it's, I need a hero.
Oh, stop. We could get sued.
For what? I may not be Beyonce, but sir, I will have you know that I was once considered quite a songbird.
Song copyright law, whether you're a songbird or not, really, really tough from publisher now. You can't even use a line from a song without the prospect of a recording company going after you.
Okay, I shall cease and desist. But I'm correct that Ming China needs a hero.
They do indeed need a hero, and they're going to find one in the form of Nicholas.
Okay, so let's sail into Liaoluo Bay.
All right, that's the southern curve of the island of Jinmen Island, part of Taiwan, but just off the coast of China, just a few kilometers away from Xiamen.
Okay, cue the martial music, because this is a battle that will determine not only the fate of this bay, but the balance of power in the South China Sea.
Dramatic stuff, but only somewhat accurate, I'd say.
Okay, tell us the facts.
Well, yeah, Zheng and his son will leave a mark on the area, extending, of course, to Formosa, which will become Taiwan. But this battle is better described, I'd say, as one of a somewhat rare win for the Chinese over the White Devils.
Yeah, true. But I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts. So, 1633, the serene bay is throbbing with pre-battle tension. And our first contestant is a dragon awakened from slumber, this new Ming Dynasty fleet under Nikki Zheng. And our second contestant would be greedy foreigners. Boo. Windmill-loving colonizers. The Dutch, commanded by people with unpronounceable names that usually feature a van.
Setting aside the windmills, the Dutch are as greedy as anyone else, including Zheng Zhilong. This is an age where might equaled right, and the winner took all. The boundary between trading and piracy and war, it's quite blurred, isn't it? But our governor of Taiwan, Hans Patzman, he doesn't have a van in his name, by the way.
Okay.
But yeah, the Dutch names are tricky. Dutch is the closest language to English there is. But yeah, I mean, ship names, for example, there are things like, the Vlissingen and the Westerwijk.
Yeah, hard.
Anyway, these ships and these military are at the top of the food chain predators.
Okay. Why are they such majestic predators?
Superior shipping technology, multiple deck ships, very powerful cannons, the sail arrangement and rigging that can make very swift maneuvers. The hulls are, except for the shallows, yeah, they're pretty good. Yeah, if you'd been around at the time and were asked to take a bet on who's going to win a naval engagement, the bet would have been on the Dutch.
Yeah, especially as Van Putmans had just destroyed all but 3 of the awesome new Ming junks. So,
yeah, Zheng does have quite a few smaller or medium-sized junks, but they're the equivalent of a sword made of bronze, while the Dutch have swords of sharpened steel.
Ooh, very poetic. But the bronze Admiral Zheng isn't stupid. He knows what the steel Dutch can do. I hate gambling. I don't know about you. I can't stand casinos or anything like that because I hate losing. But our hero, Zheng Zhilong, is a gambler, and he's willing to risk it all. And he comes up with a cunning plan. It's based kind of on Kung Fu, maybe Kung Fu-y.
Oh, is that something you picked up while watching Kung Fu Panda?
John Ross, anti-modernity campaigner, scholar of Jia, has on this day made a pop culture reference. Henceforth, this day shall be remembered as...
The day the earth stood still.
Oh, he's done it again. It's an archaic reference, but it counts. That's 2 and 1. Can he pull off a hat trick?
Okay. You have been drinking, haven't you? Anyway, well, Zheng's plan might have some things in common with martial arts strategies, but enough homages to pop culture. And, I'm not as old-fashioned as you imagine because I teach kids, so I'm up with the latest Blackpink hits and what have you.
Whoa, okay, awesome.
All right. Moving on. Back to 1633. Jinmen, a huge battle awaits. The Dutch were probably a tad arrogant, too sure of their technological superiority and their racial superiority. They didn't see it coming.
Yeah, I imagine these Pearl Harborists getting all charged up. Ja, we will sink them. The Ming Navy are ours. Charge!
With ships, not horses, and they're Dutch, not German. Well, they would have had a few Germans among them, so it's not entirely impossible. But those historical points aside, indeed, Zheng Zhilong has a plan, which was, of course, an ambush.
So you've been to Jinmen, and I shamefully have yet to go there. But from what I've read, this bay is shallow, has strong currents, and shoals lurk beneath the surface. And in general, home court advantage goes to Zheng, right? He's the guy who knows the coast. This is his water. The Dutch tourists, they're really good at plying the seas, but their ships maybe are not the best for this kind of water. They're probably better at open ocean engagements where they, blast cannon and sink each other, that kind of thing. And the gods seem to be on the side of Nicholas Zheng, as just as the Dutch fleet advances, the story is, right, the winds whip up across the bay.
Some records call the winds a fair storm, but I think that might be poetic license. No sudden typhoon, but yes, some gusts help keep the Dutch in the bay.
Zheng Zhilong, he's got a secret weapon. Fire ships. Ships filled to the brim with combustible materials, packed tight with flammable pitch, oil-soaked rags, mounds of gunpowder, and manned by some very brave men who are willing, if necessary, to sacrifice themselves for victory. These ships get set alight. The Chinese sailors on board kind of point them in the direction, and the Dutch ducks are just sitting there.
It was October 22nd, 1633. Zheng's fleet is up against both the Dutch warships and 50 Chinese pirate junks that had switched sides and allied themselves with the Dutch. Zheng lures the Dutch and their pirate friends into Liaoluo Bay after dividing his fleet and going with a pincher move, as I recall reading. The traitorous Chinese pirates see what's happening and try to flee. They see they're being encircled by the Ming fleet. All this action is confusing and the Dutch are starting to get concerned. Zheng gives the order, ignore the pirates, focus on the Dutch.
Okay, so this is where the fire ships come in, right?
Yes. Zheng Zhilong uses a couple of his larger war junks, actually, as the fire ships. He's thinking the Dutch won't expect that he'd use these important ships as essentially kamikaze attackers. Normally it would just be like rafts or expendable ships. And Zheng has these big ships look as normal as possible for as long as possible. There are cannons and soldiers aboard looking all very ordinary. I love this part. The soldiers and sailors have these bamboo poles. They use them to jump or pole vault overboard at the last minute.
And bamboo is an excellent floating device, so...
The Dutch just didn't catch on to this plan, and the large war junks come straight at them so quickly, the Dutch don't even have time to raise their anchors.
But finally, they do get it, and they start panicking. I read about them trying to saw through the anchor ropes and escape. There's much screaming and freaking out in Dutch, of course, but 9, the Dutch are doomed.
Hey, we have a lot of Dutch listeners.
I'm actually allowed to do this because they're my people. I was born in Amsterdam and I lived there for 2 whole weeks. They're a very forgiving people, the Dutch. A lot of hippies, groovy people.
Moving on. All right. In the summer of 1633, the grooviest navy in Asia belongs to the Dutch. But just a few months later, however, October 1633, the Dutch are significantly less of a problem for Ming China. Their force has been decimated. Putman's superiors in Batavia actually ordered him to stay away from China. The governor of Fujian sent the Ming emperor an official recommendation that Zheng get a promotion, but Zheng is one step ahead and self-promotes, and he gets rid of the governor of Fujian. Oh.
Yeah, and then after that, he's sort of in charge of basically everything. Putmans and Zheng, so they both slap each other around, right? And then they begin trade talks. Some of those leftover pirates, the ones they'd been on his side and that side, they'd switch back and forth. They go to the Dutch and they offer to ally with them against Zheng, but Putman says, "Niet." I mean, he's like, we have a base in Taiwan. Trade is good. We're going to pass on attacking Zheng, but good luck to you.
That pirate gang you just mentioned, they did not get lucky. They were eliminated in the 1640s by Zheng Zhilong, and this happened just in time for the fall of the Ming dynasty. Officially, the date for that is 1644. And Nicholas and his son are in for a whole slew of new battles and plenty more bloodshed.
John, you are, again, proving to be not a massive fan of happy endings, are you?
It's not my fault. That's just the way history is.
Okay, you are correct. Misery is coming, but today is today. Tomorrow is tomorrow. As of this moment, let's say 1640, Nicholas Zheng Zhilong is a champion. This guy has an annual income, I read one place perhaps as high as 3 times that of the whole Dutch East India Company.
Yeah, that's an incredible number. I've seen that as well. Because, the VOC were the biggest European company, the biggest trader in the world at that time. But if you think about it, the Fujian Empire, right, of Zheng, they're sailing lots of ships locally in the region, whereas your VOC, they have to send ships halfway around the world. It's a lot harder work, isn't it?
In any case, he's rich, right? He's
super rich.
Filthy rich, and possibly even
one of the richest men in Asia, one of the richest in the world. Yeah, and he has control of the region, and his power would continue until the Manchus turned up and started shaving people's foreheads and making them grow ponytails.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're going to spoil the end of the story again. So let's end here today with the end of that. On a positive note, destroyed the Dutch and is really wealthy. If you're interested in this guy, Daddy Zheng Zhilong, find some time to read more about him because he's really cool, actually. And I don't know, I guess I could call him a Renaissance man.
Yeah, the Renaissance was a bit earlier than that. But yeah, technically 1640s still count. Okay.
Oh, God. Goodbye, everybody. I'm Eric Michael Smith. Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye. I'm John Ross. Bye.